Sarah Jenkins thought she knew what hell looked like when she first walked into Apex Solutions Customer Care Center on a rainy Tuesday morning in October. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying insects, casting a sickly yellow glow over rows of beige cubicles that stretched endlessly across the warehouse floor. The air smelled of stale coffee, desperation, and that peculiar odor that comes from too many people sharing too little space for too long. But Sarah was desperate herself, 3 months unemployed, eviction notice taped to her apartment door, and a bank account that had seen better decades. "Welcome to paradise," muttered Derek, her cubicle neighbor, as Sarah fumbled with her headset on her first day. Derek had been there for 4 years, and it showed in the hollow look behind his eyes and the way his left eye twitched every time the phone rang. His cubicle was decorated with motivational posters that had clearly lost their battle against irony. "Hang in there," featuring a kitten dangling from a branch, and "every call is an opportunity," with a rainbow that seemed to mock the gray reality around them. The training was supposed to last a week, but Sarah learned everything she needed to know in the first hour. Never make promises you can't keep, never take anything personally, and never, ever let them hear the despair in your voice. The script was laminated and thumb-worn, passed down through generations of customer service representatives like some cursed heirloom. "Thank you for calling Apex Solutions, where your satisfaction is our priority. My name is Sarah. How can I exceed your expectations today?" She would repeat those words approximately 847 times over the next 6 months, and each repetition would chip away another piece of her soul. The calls started innocently enough. Mrs. Henderson from Missouri couldn't figure out why her cable box kept blinking 12 o'clock. Mr. Torres from Phoenix wanted to upgrade his internet package. These were the good calls, the ones that made Sarah think maybe this job wouldn't be so bad after all. She was naive then, still believing that customer service was about helping people solve problems. Then came the screamers. Mrs. Kowalski was Sarah's first real taste of the abyss. The woman called at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and Sarah could hear her breathing heavily before she even spoke. When she finally did speak, it was with the fury of 1,000 suns compressed into one 67-year-old retiree from Buffalo. "You people are incompetent morons." Sarah checked the account notes. Mrs. Kowalski had indeed called 15 times, and each representative had documented their interaction with increasingly frantic urgency. The problem was simple: her router needed to be unplugged for 30 seconds and plugged back in. But Mrs. Kowalski was convinced this was a conspiracy orchestrated by Apex Solutions to drive her insane. "Mom, I understand your frustration," Sarah began, following the script. "Let me see what I can do to resolve this for you today." "Don't you mom me, you little twit." Sarah's supervisor was Brenda, a 45-year-old woman who had worked in call centers for so long that she had developed a permanently fixed smile that never quite reached her eyes. Brenda was in a meeting, as she always seemed to be when customers demanded to speak with supervisors. The hold music began to play, a tinny, instrumental version of "Girl from Ipanema" that would haunt Sarah's dreams for months to come. Mrs. Kowalski waited on hold for 23 minutes. Sarah could see the call timer ticking away, red numbers that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. When Brenda finally picked up, Mrs. Kowalski had reached a level of rage that transcended human understanding. She screamed at Brenda for 47 minutes, during which time Sarah handled 6 other calls, each one bleeding into the next in a cacophony of complaints, confusion, and barely contained hostility. The thing about working in a call center is that you start to develop a kind of psychological armor. You learn to disconnect your actual self from the voice that speaks into the headset. Sarah discovered she could smile while being verbally abused, could maintain perfect professional courtesy while customers questioned her intelligence, her competence, and occasionally her parentage. She became two people: Sarah the person, who went home to her studio apartment and cried in the shower, and customer service Sarah, who lived only in the 8 hours between clock in and clock out. But the armor wasn't perfect. It had cracks, and sometimes the darkness seeped through. There was Mr. Brennan, who called every single day for 3 weeks because he was convinced Apex Solutions was stealing bandwidth from his neighbors and giving it to him without his consent. He was absolutely certain this was happening and demanded that Sarah fix it immediately by reducing his internet speed. No amount of explanation could convince him that this wasn't how internet service worked. He would call, Sarah would patiently explain the same thing she had explained the day before. He would get angry, demand a supervisor, get transferred, and then call back the next day to start the cycle all over again. Then there was the woman who called crying because her husband had died and she needed to cancel his account, but she didn't have the account password and couldn't remember his social security number because grief had scrambled her memory. Sarah spent 2 hours on that call, working with her supervisor and the account verification team to help the woman cancel the service. It was one of the few times Sarah felt like she had actually helped someone, but it left her emotionally drained for days. The worst calls were the ones that started normal and descended into madness, like the gentleman who called to inquire about his bill, but somehow ended up confessing that he was pretty sure his smart TV was spying on him and reporting his viewing habits to the government. Or the woman who insisted that her internet service was making her houseplants grow too fast and demanded compensation for having to repot her ficus. But nothing prepared Sarah for the call that would break her. It was a Friday in March around 4:30 p.m. when most people were starting to think about the weekend. Sarah had been on the phones for 5 straight hours with only a 15-minute break, during which she had wolfed down half a stale bagel in the break room while Derek told her about his recurring nightmare where customer complaints literally ate him alive. The call started like any other, a man's voice, middle-aged, polite. "Hi, I'm having trouble with my internet connection. Thank you for calling Apex Solutions." Sarah began automatically. "My name is Sarah. How can I exceed your expectations today?" "Well, Sarah, I hope you can help me. My internet keeps cutting out, and I work from home, so this is really affecting my productivity." This seems straightforward. Sarah pulled up his account and began running through the standard troubleshooting steps. Check the router, test the connection, restart the modem. Everything seemed to be working fine on her end. "Sir, I'm showing that your connection is stable. Are you experiencing the outage right now?" There was a pause. Then the man's voice changed, became quieter, more intense. "Sarah, can I tell you something?" "Of course, sir. What seems to be the problem?" "The problem, Sarah, is that I know what you people are doing. I know about the signals you're sending through the internet cables. I know about the mind control experiments." Sarah's heart sank. She glanced at Derek, who was dealing with his own caller and gesticulating wildly at his computer screen. This was going to be one of those calls. "Sir, I'm not sure I understand. Are you having connectivity issues with your internet service?" "Don't play dumb with me, Sarah. I've been tracking the patterns. The internet cuts out exactly when I'm researching certain topics: government corruption, corporate conspiracies, the truth about what happened in 1987. Sarah had no idea what happened in 1987, and she was pretty sure she didn't want to know. She tried to redirect the conversation back to technical support, but the man was just getting started. For the next hour and 17 minutes, he told Sarah about a vast conspiracy involving internet service providers, government agencies, and alien technology. He explained how the cables buried under the ground were actually part of a massive mind control network, and how customer service representatives like Sarah were trained to identify truth seekers and flag their accounts for special monitoring. Sarah tried multiple times to transfer the call, but the man seemed to know exactly what she was doing. "Don't you dare put me on hold, Sarah, but don't you dare try to transfer me to someone else. I know your tricks. I know how this system works." The call timer ticked past an hour, then past an hour and a half. Sarah's supervisor walked by twice, glanced at her screen, and kept walking. The policy was clear: don't hang up on customers unless they become abusive or threatening. This man wasn't threatening anyone. He was just completely detached from reality and absolutely convinced that Sarah was part of a global conspiracy. "Sarah, are you still there?" "Yes, sir. I'm here." "Good. Now, I need you to understand something very important. They're listening to this call right now. They're always listening, but I've found a way to communicate that they can't detect. Do you know Morse code, Sarah?" "No, sir, I don't." "That's too bad, because I'm going to need you to tap out a message for me. Can you tap on your desk, Sarah? Just a simple pattern." Sarah looked around the call center. Her coworkers were hunched over their desks, lost in their own nightmare conversations. The supervisors were in their meeting room, visible through the glass walls, gesticulating at a whiteboard covered with graphs and charts. Nobody was paying attention to her. Nobody cared that she was trapped in this surreal conversation with a man who wanted her to tap out Morse code messages to defeat government surveillance. "Sir, I'm really not able to help you with that. Is there anything related to your internet service that I can assist you with today?" "Internet service? The man laughed, a sound that made Sarah's skin crawl. Sarah, honey, there is no internet service. There's only the network. The network that connects all of our minds, whether we want it to or not. And you're part of it now. Just by talking to me, just by listening to what I'm telling you, you're part of the network. Something inside Sarah snapped. Maybe it was the fluorescent lights that had been buzzing in her ears for 6 months. Maybe it was the hold music that played on an endless loop in her subconscious. Maybe it was the realization that she had spent the last hour and 23 minutes of her life listening to a man explain how her job was part of an alien mind control experiment, and she still had 3.5 hours left on her shift. Sarah said, her voice perfectly calm and professional. I need to let you know that your call may be monitored or recorded for quality assurance purposes. Of course it's being monitored. And sir, I also need to inform you that based on our conversation today, I'm going to recommend that your account be flagged for our special monitoring program. We'll be keeping a very close eye on your internet usage patterns from now on. There was silence on the other end of the line. Sarah could hear the man breathing. Sarah? He whispered. Are you threatening me? Not at all, sir. I'm just doing my job. Is there anything else I can help you with today? The man hung up. Sarah sat in her cubicle staring at her computer screen, feeling like she had just stepped through a looking glass into some alternate dimension where nothing made sense and everything was possible. She had just spent nearly an hour and a half talking to a man about government mind control and alien internet cables, and somehow, she was the one who felt crazy. Derek leaned over the cubicle wall. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Something like that, Sarah muttered, updating the call notes. What was she supposed to write? Customer believes internet service is part of government conspiracy. Recommended therapy. She settled on. Customer expressed concerns about service reliability. Troubleshooting completed. No technical issues found. That night, Sarah went home to her studio apartment and sat in her car in the parking lot for 20 minutes before she could summon the energy to walk up the stairs. She heated up a frozen dinner, opened a bottle of wine, and tried to watch Netflix. But every time her internet connection hiccuged, which it did 3 times during a 40-minute episode, she found herself wondering if maybe, just maybe, the crazy man had been onto something. The next Monday, Sarah walked into Apex Solutions' customer care center and submitted her 2 weeks' notice. Brenda accepted it with her fixed smile and wished her well in her future endeavors. Derek looked genuinely sad to see her go. What are you going to do? He asked. I don't know, Sarah admitted. Maybe retail, maybe food service. Anything where I don't have to pretend that the customer is always right when they're clearly living in a completely different reality than the rest of us. You'll be back, Derek said with his twitchy smile. They always come back. Call centers are like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. But Sarah didn't come back. She got a job at a local bookstore, making less money but feeling like a human being again. She still occasionally has nightmares about hold music and angry customers, but they're getting less frequent. Sometimes, late at night, when her internet connection starts acting up, she remembers the man who told her about the network that connects all of our minds. And, just for a moment, in the space between sleeping and waking, she wonders if maybe he wasn't as crazy as she thought. After all, she spent 6 months in a windowless room, talking to strangers all day, slowly losing pieces of herself with every conversation. If that's not mind control, what is? The fluorescent lights buzz overhead wherever she goes now, a constant reminder of those months in the abyss. But Sarah has learned something valuable from her time in customer service, how sometimes the person on the other end of the line isn't the enemy. Sometimes they're just another soul trapped in the same broken system, trying to make sense of a world that stopped making sense a long time ago. And sometimes, the real horror isn't the customers at all. It's the realization that you've become so disconnected from your own humanity that you can smile while your spirit slowly dies, one phone call at a time. The hold button may pause the conversation, but it never stops the nightmare.